A Swift Kick in the Ass, episode 25.
All big changes start with a swift kick in the ass. Join the journey of lifelong friends, John Curran and Tom Stewart, as they make conventional thought bend over and take a boot to the keister. Warning, listeners may notice a force equal to or greater than needed to get your ass moving. A swift kick in the ass, living life on your terms.
Welcome, I'm Tom Stewart, and I'm joined with my lifelong friend, John Curran, and today's episode is about setting small goals to get big wins. John, what's your philosophy on this?
Well, first, before we get into this, let me just say I love our opening music. It always gets me pumped up, gets me ready to podcast, and today's topic of setting small goals to make big wins really makes a lot of sense, because over the last few episodes you've heard us talk about how we're in a rut, we're trying to get in better shape, we're trying to get better organized, we're trying to do all these big things, and it seems a bit overwhelming at times because they're big things. It's easy to get overwhelmed when you're trying to move forward. So Tom and I think, have both made some progress. For me, I've been systematically removing clutter from my life. I built a huge garage at my house, and I've been slowly but surely going through all of my stuff, and I'm throwing things away. I'm getting organized, and I'm already starting to see a result. I can find tools now. When my daughters say that something's broken on their bike, I actually know where that tool is that I need to fix it, and that makes me feel great. Going to the gym, not often as I like, but I'm going consistently now, and I'm doing push-ups at home and just doing exercises. So I'm taking small steps, and I think I'm moving forward. How about you, Tom?
Yeah. So we were talking about being in a rut, and me and John both started slipping into that rut, and you go in and out of ruts throughout your life. It's just normal. But I think what happened, at least in my case, is it's a combination of the daily grind mixed with overwhelm. I'm always looking for a way out of the rat race, and one of the things that we look forward to is doing our podcast and getting things out on the blog and out in the doing a lot of stuff on the internet and shaking hands out at podcast events. And what kind of started happening is that we started getting all these lofty goals, and the holidays came by, and we started not getting podcast out as regularly as we wanted to. Had things around the house that needed to be done, cutting the grass, all kinds of stuff that just started making you feel like you weren't getting anything done. And then you start almost like a downward spiral. You start going down that staircase, and you're like, oh man, it's just, am I ever going to get out of this? So one of the things I was telling John is, that I started feeling better about is I started setting these little goals that I just wanted to knock out that had nothing to do with anything but some housework. There was some things I wanted to get rid of my phone. I have a regular phone. I pay like $60 every month for phone service, and I had DSL, and I was like, well, let me cancel the phone. And when I had called the phone company, they said, well, if you cancel your phone, your DSL price is going to go up another $10. And I'm like, man, well, that's not fair. And so what I did is I switched my entire, I had satellite TV, I switched to cable. I got rid of the phone, and I got Magic Jack. I was going to go with Uma. John uses Uma and hasn't had a phone bill in years. But Magic Jack, I heard the reviews. I did a lot of study on it, and my boss had one, and I listened to his, and I was like, you know what? It sounds clear. It's not like what I remember when the first time I heard one, man. It was like, I was like, that's not going to work. But I installed it all. I ran cables over, I have a mother-in-law's quarter. I ran it over to her because that's the main thing, is I wanted to make sure my mom was set up with a phone. I set up a special phone circuit, so when my mom picks up her phone, she doesn't even have to dial anything. It automatically dials my house. So she has like the bat phone, or the when I was in the Air Force, we had the presidential red phone, and you'd pick it up and it would instantly call the White House or whoever was supposed to be on the other end of that phone. So that's the same thing. I hooked that up. Started working out, started, getting things, little small things taken care of to achieve those wins. And what happens when you get a small win, you kind of feel like, I got something accomplished, and you start feeling better about yourself. You start to walk with a little bit more pride and, a little oomph in your step.
Yeah, Tommy, when you start talking about writing your list, I mean, I'm the king of lists, but it makes me think back about eight or 9 years ago when my wife and I were seriously in serious debt. And I felt like there was a 1,000-pound gorilla on my back because I was, I had tons of bills. And not only did I have bills, but I had these wants and these needs that weren't being met. And not talking sexual needs. Those are always met, buddy. but in any case, that's sorry to get off track there.
I'm sure your wife might disagree with that.
Yeah, I'm sure she would. But these wants and needs were really things like we needed a new bed. Our bed was old. It was lumpy.
Because your needs are always being met.
Just wore the springs right out. Yeah, that's why we needed a new bed. It wasn't that it was 15 years old. and sagging in places.
Who you kidding, man? When you have kids, my bed, I have one of the worst beds because all the springs are broken, and it's because I had little monkeys jumping all over the beds and breaking my beds, and then I buy them nice little like bunk beds and stuff. And I remember first time I bought my daughter a set of bunk beds, I went and laid on the mattress, and I was like, my God, this mattress is excellent. I paid like $75 for it. It was like at Costco's or something. And I was like, man. And so I started sleeping in her room sometimes. I was like, this is like the best night's sleep I ever had.
You're absolutely right. And so I started writing a list. I basically did a brain dump, and I started writing out all the things that I felt like I needed, I felt like I wanted. I wrote down the bills that I needed to pay. I had like a catch-up list, and I recognized that as I went through that process, I just did this on a piece of paper, nothing fancy, but as I started writing things down, a natural order or natural grouping started to kind of come out of the process. So I had, a list of bills that I needed to catch up on. I had the amounts. I had a list of the things that I wanted, like a new mattress, and my daughter set our microwave on fire, so I had to put a microwave there, and all these little things that they don't maybe seem like much when you're if you look at it just by itself, it's not a big deal, but combined and added on top of all the other things, like you don't like your work, you don't like your commute, you're having difficulties with so-and-so.
The cost of living's going up, your income's going down.
Yeah, exactly. The economy sucks. All these different things that might just be small, if you look at them separately, they all start to add up, and they all really start to take on a more serious weight and start weighing you down. And so I did this brain dump and started listing all the things, grouping, and as I would go through this process, and I could see where I could group things differently, I crumpled out my list and threw it away, because all lists are really temporary. They're not meant to be permanent. They serve a specific purpose. It's a list of things that you need to do or want to do, and once you do them, crumple it up, throw it away. And I found that writing down these items and these thoughts, they made it real for me. So instead of these thoughts just bouncing around in my head saying, oh, I have to repair, this cabinet in my kitchen, it made it real. It put it down on a piece of paper. I could hold the piece of paper, and it is like magic, kind of left my mind, so I could more clearly focus on my priorities and look at things and say, okay, what do I need to get done first? And what's the easiest? In the business world, we call that the low hanging fruit.
Yes. Yes.
What can I grab now and not only mark it off my list, but get that small win that you talked about. And as you start grabbing this low-lying fruit, you recognize that, hey, you know what? I'm going to reach up a little bit more, and I'm going to grab a kind of a higher hanging fruit. And you get confidence, and it builds over time. This moves you into a habit. Habits are basically routines that occur on a regular basis. They're pretty much unconscious thought. We don't really think about doing them. We just do them. It's something we just do. And through this process of writing it down and marking things off the list, it frees you up, and I think it moves you forward to those bigger goals.
Good. I basically wrote a blog about this on my jiu-jitsu website because I've been going through the same thing. I've been in a rut in jiu-jitsu training, and it all applies. It's all the same thing. It's not a matter of it's a jiu-jitsu problem. It's a life problem. And what I did is I came up with basically a list of 7 items, areas that I thought were helping me to overcome and get out of the rut. Of course, the biggest one was set small goals so we can get some big wins. The next one, it's kind of obvious, I'm not going to spend much time on it, is rest. It's important to me sometimes, to make sure that I go to bed at a good time. Also to make sure that I clear my head. A lot of times I'm constantly working, man. I'm constantly doing stuff, whether it's for the podcast or for blogs or whatever. And I don't sit down and just take enough time to relax and rest. So sometimes it's cool just to kick back and watch some TV or spend some time with your kids. We went camping, things that just kind of get you away from everything so you can kind of take your mind off and reset that thermostat inside your body, and so you can start fresh. The next one that's really helped is unless you have something to say about rest.
Tom, before you move on with the rest, taking a rest might just mean stepping away from the computer for a minute and maybe closing your eyes and taking some deep breaths in and kind of centering yourself too. It doesn't mean taking a week-long vacation, as much as you would love to do that, as much as I would love to do that. It's not always practical to do, but you can take small rest periods. Get up, stretch your legs, walk around. Even walking around the block one time can often give you what you need to refocus.
Or even meditation. I know a lot of people really tout the value of meditation, and I believe it. I can't sit around still for a long time and just think about nothing. It's very difficult. But if you're one of those people that can do that, that is a great tool. Yeah. And I speak from experience. I did, Chinese martial art. That meditation was a big part of it a long time ago. And that was always difficult for me. And I remember my teacher used to explain how your mind is almost like a movie. It keeps on playing over these same parts over and over and over in a circle. And when you finally get to that point of opening your mind enough, it's almost like the bottom of a bucket dropping out and all the water spilling out, and then you just feel empty. And to try to empty your mind is very difficult, because even one of the techniques is they will count as they breathe, but then you're focusing on the counting, and it becomes a paradox in essence, and to think about nothing at all is very, very difficult.
Yeah, and anything that you can do that will help you focus your mind. For me, it's playing my guitar. Just picking it up, just strumming a few chords, anything that forces you to focus your mind on one specific activity can offer a lot of value to you if you're trying to rest and trying to,
That brings up an interesting,
change your mindset.
Almost opposite of what we're just talking about with the with not thinking about anything. You're right. They call that flow. When you get, say you're an artist, and when you're painting, you just get real creative, and before you know it, like 3 hours has gone by and you haven't even noticed it. It hasn't even phased you. That's what they call flow. And I think that's like have found is like the optimum performance that a human can do. And all your stresses kind of go to the side and you're not thinking about anything. I notice that sometimes when I'm training, that will happen, or when I'm making, I do video and stuff as a hobby. And sometimes when I'm making a video for someone, I get so involved with it that I forget about everything else. And it'll be like 3:00 in the morning. And I'm like, oh, wow, I better get some sleep because, hours have just gone by, but it doesn't feel like work to me at all. It feels fun.
So, Tom, tell me about the rest of this list.
All right. The next one was simplify. And this one's pretty quick, but there's two things that I applied this to. We had talked about in the past episodes about working out. And, it's a matter of finding time and moving it in my schedule. And I already do jujitsu, but I want to lift weights. And finding the time to lift weights adequately was causing me a problem. So I was listening to this guy that's a starting strength coach, and he was talking about strength, and he was saying that, hey, look, strength is the foundation of everything. Before cardio, before flexibility. If you don't have strength, you don't have anything. You have to have strength. And I just broke it down to the fundamentals. All I do is 3 exercises. It doesn't take a long time, and it allows me to progress and write down exactly the weights I'm using. So each workout, I increase the weight. And what I'm doing is 3 basic exercises. I'm doing the back squat, which is I do that first because it's like very taxing lift. But I basically do 5 sets of 5, and I increase the weight each time. And really it's the last work set is really the one that I'm going for, and that's 5 reps of the heaviest weight that I can do. And each workout, I add 10 pounds to that. So since I've been doing this workout, within the past month, I've put 40 pounds onto my squat and 15 pounds on my bench. And the other exercise was the bench press. I alternate that with a military press. So if I work out on Monday with that and I work out on Friday, again, I'll switch between military press, which is pushing weight above your head, to the incline press, bench press. And then I do pull-ups. That's it. I don't do biceps. I don't do triceps. I don't do calves or abs or anything else. I'm going for that foundation to build a core. And the thing is, it's working. It's working for me very well. I just simplified it. It doesn't take a long time. I only do it twice a week. That way it doesn't interfere with my jiu-jitsu training, and it allows me to still feel good about myself.
Just because this ties in with the subject, and I'm going to simplify my workout. I mean, I felt very weak, and then I just decided I needed to do something. So before I was putting my little boy to bed, I would go into his room every night, and he plays around and runs around his room and plays Lightning McQueen, and I do push-ups. And when I first started doing push-ups, I was so damn weak. I mean, it was so difficult for me to even do 10. I mean, I felt terrible. I felt so winded, so weak. But I'm doing them every night now. Unless I exercise at the gym, I don't do them. But every night, basically, I'm doing push-ups, and now I'm doing not only, I'm not just doing a few push-ups. I'm doing at least 25 push-ups, 1 set, and then I'll go and I'll do 10 more. And that's just in the period of less than a month. Probably about 3 weeks I've been doing this, and I feel the difference.
It'd be interesting, and I've always wondered this, and I should have did it with my own kids, but I was like, what if you had like little Johnny jump on your back, and you did a couple reps, and every night you did that, and as he gets older through the years, he's starting to get a little gain weight, and of course you're getting stronger. Would you be able to keep up with it? Like, finally he's like a 18-year-old kid hanging on your back, and you're sitting there cranking out reps of push-ups. I used to think about
5 years old.
I used to think about that going up the stairs, like carrying my daughter up the stairs. I'd be like, I wonder if I just kept on, she's going to be gaining weight and getting bigger every year, would that, build up my legs over the years?
Yeah, I've had the same thought. I've had exactly the same. And it's so funny because I think Johnny, my son Johnny, is actually, he must have read my mind or something, because as I'm doing push-ups, now he's jumping on my back.
See? And don't you remember Conan? When he was pushing that wheel, how come is Google freaking out on us? I hear bings. Conan.
Yeah,
and remember the original Conan, he had the wheel of pain, and he started off when he was a kid, and there was 20 people helping him push the wheel of pain or whatever, and I think it ground up weed or something, and through the years you would see all the people kind of fall off till the end. It's finally Conan the Barbarian, or Arnold Schwarzenegger, they're pushing the wheel by himself, and that kind of explained how he got so big and muscular.
Yep, that's the ticket. It's funny though. I thought the same exact thing with my kids, and have tried to do that, but maybe I'll start doing that more with Johnny. Definitely calisthenics and any type of exercise where you can use your own body weight is good. At one of the hospitals that I worked at many years ago, there was a assistant director of the medical center who was in amazing shape. And I asked him if he worked out or how often he worked out. He says, I don't work out at all. He says, I have a morning routine. Every morning I do push-ups, I do sit-ups, I do pull-ups. That's all I do. It takes me about 15 minutes a day. And he was amazing shape, and he was in his 60s. So it does work. All
right, so let's move on. The other one that I had was get out of your comfort zone. And the way I apply this was something that happened to us the other day. Last month, I was listening to a podcast with Paul Culligan, and he's a famous podcaster and a speaker, and has spoke at the New Media Expo and all the big events. And he wrote a book about how to podcast, and he was asking for submissions. And I thought, I don't know, man. I don't know if he'll accept our submission, but me being a technical guy and our podcast is out there. We're trying to get more listeners. I say, let me see if I can get in this book. So I sent him an article. Didn't hear anything. I didn't even know if he accepted it. And I was like, you know what? At least I tried. If he doesn't accept it, I'll use it as a blog post somewhere. And Friday or Thursday or Friday, I was going through our email and realized that I had missed an email from his assistant. And they said that it had been accepted, and they showed me a few editorial changes. And it's a published book. It's called How to Podcast 2015, and it's going to be available in Barnes and Noble as a hardback. So it's a real book. And you can also pick it up on Amazon and Kindle for 99 cents. I think the hardcover is $13. But and we're in there talking about our workflow next to Dave Jackson from the School of Podcasting, John Lee Dumas, who is from Entrepreneur on Fire, who is just changed the face of podcasting, and it's pretty cool. I think that was something that I threw out there and didn't even think that I would get a chance of being in the book, but we got there.
Yeah, I think just sometimes you do have to confront that fear, and you just have to do it, and that makes you a better person, not only from the process of doing that, but when things like that happen, when you get published. What a reward that is. I know I didn't write that article, but I felt great, and I felt very proud of you for, putting yourself out there and putting us out there.
Yeah, because it's about the show. Your name's in there. It's talking about, the premise of the show and how we do our podcast, how we do this right now on over Google Air. We give the nuts and bolts, so if someone wanted to try the same thing, they could replicate how we do it.
Yeah. Back when I was in school, I read a book by Dr. Susan Jeffers. It's called Feel the Fear, but Do It Anyway. And Dr. Jeffers talks about how we have comfort zones, and imagine a circle, and the comfort zone is in the middle. You can move anywhere in that comfort zone, feel comfortable. When you push out of that comfort zone, it doesn't just push it in one place. It expands the entire circle so that you feel you have a bigger area of comfort kind of to work around. So as you push out in one area, you're able to be more comfortable in other areas as well. I think that really applies well to taking small steps leading to bigger goals. If you're looking to eventually reach a big goal, you have to do it in steps. You can't just take one giant leap and get there. That's not the way it works. You have to keep pushing, and you have to take smaller steps, and the smaller steps snowball into something bigger.
Absolutely. My jiu-jitsu coach always talks about getting out of your comfort zone, because it's one of the philosophies in Brazilian jiu-jitsu that, if you sit in a certain, everyone develops a certain game and they're comfortable with that. There's something called a guard, where you can hold someone basically between your legs for a long time and they can't get out. But the problem is you could hold them all day, but you're not doing anything. And so they constantly say, open up your guard, let it loose, try to throw an armbar, try to do a choke, try to sweep them to, put them on their back, do something different rather than just playing it safe, because that's what you're doing. If you're sitting in a guard, you're just playing it safe. But if you play it safe through life, it doesn't work, man. You got to put yourself out there. You got to get out of your comfort zone in order to make change.
Yeah. I know I'm probably going to steal your thunder on your list, but I know that also part of winning is just showing up.
Yes.
I mean, if you don't put yourself out there, if you just stay within your room in front of your TV and you do nothing else, you're never going to meet people. You're never going to do anything exciting with your life. You're just going to sit there and waste your life away doing whatever you're doing in that small, environment that you call your life. Keep pushing yourself out and keep pushing yourself to do better and better. And, before you know it, life has changed. And I'm sure each and every one of us could look back in our youth and think about the way we viewed the world, and the way we view it today as older people has changed. We didn't even recognize all that change is going on during the time. That's not the way it works. But it does happen, and you just got to keep pushing and pushing and pushing. For me, just getting through undergraduate school was a slow, painful process that took me probably 5.5 years, because I was working my way through, and I was taking just a few classes at a time because I was working all the time. So it took me forever, and it seemed like I would never, ever get through. But not only did I graduate from, undergraduate college, I decided I wanted more, and I got 2 master's degrees after that. Looking back, it seemed like it was taking me forever and ever, but now I have 30 years experience in the field. So time passes by quickly. You got to show up. You got to do it.
Yep.
And
slow and steady wins the race, as they say, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, keep showing up is something that, I stole that philosophy from 12 Steps. That's one of their things, as, you keep showing up. And I heard that philosophy and I was like, I like that. I'm going to apply that to jiu-jitsu. And I used to tell all the guys that were new that would just get discouraged that, hey, just keep showing up. Eventually it will happen. It will click, and, this will start happening for you, and you'll feel better about yourself. The next one, which I guess would be really, well, I got 2 more, but one's confront fear. I'm not the most outspoken person. I see myself as an introvert, not an extrovert, and I've been going to a lot of podcast meetups, WordPress meetups, different conferences, and I've been trying to network more, and that's not easy for me, man. That's not I don't like it. That's not my game. And networking in person has just always been, awkward for me. But I've been putting myself out there and doing it, and trying to, spread the podcast, try to get out there and change my life and make a future for me and you and my family. So that's one of the things. And, in jiu-jitsu, I'm going to, since I talked about this and it's tied in, what happens is I'll get these guys in that are lower belts than me. And I'm getting afraid to get tapped out or something. And sometimes you just have to let it go and let it happen. And that's what gets me into the next one, was letting go of pride. Let yourself do something different. Don't hold yourself back. And that's where I stand.
It's interesting that you say that, Tommy, because it reminds me. I talked about the lists that I made and all the things that I wanted and felt that I needed, and I'd wrote down I wanted a bed, and I figured it would cost me $1,000 or something like that, and I needed a microwave, and that was going to cost me so much, and I actually attached a price to the things that I wanted. And what I learned is that I never had to pay that price that I had attached to it. I had this cost of whatever I was trying to do in my head, and it never panned out that way. And I made a game out of it to get a good deal. But I think that so many times we get this idea in our head about what's going to happen, and we're not fortune tellers. We can't tell the future. So we need to just go out there and do it. And I think that what you'll find is that life surprises you, and that the cost is really nothing that you thought you were going to have to pay. It's something quite different. Not just financial cost, just the cost of the cost and the rewards of sleeping in a nice unlumpy bed, a nice comfortable bed.
All right, so we better let's start wrapping this up. In review, the 7 that we have. The first one, which is set small goals to get some big wins. Rest, simplify, let go of pride, get out of your comfort zone, confront fear, and keep showing up.
Yep. And we hope that you keep showing up and listening to our podcasts. We'd love to hear from you. Please visit us at www.aswiftkickintheass.com. Leave us a review on iTunes or Stitcher. We'd love to hear from you, especially in regards to subjects that you want us to talk about. And we want to know how we can help you.
I just want to say something. Before we started this show tonight, I was talking about an app that we use in order to play the intro and outro. And, I was saying how I wish that it had an ability to buy the full version so I didn't have to see the stupid ads that keep on popping up. And this one will bring a smile to your face, John. And I don't know why they're targeting me with this, but it says, view pics of single men.
They've been looking
I
at
have
your
no
internet
idea.
history, Tom.
All right, we're gonna shut it down. And the little chime from Google. Google is freaking out, man. I don't know what's wrong with it tonight, but they're just making that little chime, ching, ching, ching. I need to upgrade the software, is what it is. All right, man. Thanks for listening. And
until next time.
Absolutely. Thanks. See ya.
Thank you for listening to A Swift Kick in the Ass podcast. We hope you enjoyed today's content, and we ask you to please leave us a review in iTunes. Also, head over to aswiftkickintheass.com to get a free copy of the Simple Spelling Tool.